A very good evening and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Gugulethu Cele. Now today I'm joined in studio by Lebo Motshegoa, who's the Managing Director of Foshizi, a consumer research company focusing on mass market for a closer look at what people do when they get their retrenchment packages. Yep, when you get that letter and your boss tells you, unfortunately, this has come to the end of the road and you get that massive amount of cash, what do South Africans do? Lebo?
Hello, how are you?
Good on yourself and good to have you on the show.
That's for me, Coco.
Indeed. So the bad news, you hear it, unfortunately your term of employment has come to an end, or you either sign up for it and say, okay, I'll take a voluntary severance package, and then we get that money and what do we spend it on?
Well, based on the research that we did, we found that everyone had said, and everyone who's already spent their money have said they wish the company got a financial advisor involved because they treated that money like lotto. All right? So one bunch of the people were saying to us, I settled my debts. I made sure that my house was paid off. Some of them were saying, well, all I did was just I made sure that the house that I have back home, I settled it or I finished building it. Kind of like almost like I'm relocating. The City of Light hasn't necessarily worked out for me. And then some of them were saying that they started businesses. And which is very interesting because they are now very calculative in terms of what type of businesses they get into. In the olden days, if you're 45 and you just got retired or you just got retrenched, typically what you will then do is go and open a spaza shop or open a shebeen. Now, those two platforms have become extremely difficult. One is the law into getting into shebeens alone is very difficult. The spaza shop market is owned by the foreign market. About 70% of that is owned by them. So it has become very difficult now. That becomes a default place to go. So you're finding then that people there's one aspect of them who are saying, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to use the skills that I have to actually start my own business. Almost like, behaving like a freelancer at a much older age this time around. And then some of them have said that what they did was they started a transportation business where they're transporting kids with their money. But the one thing that's keeping them all up at night is the change in lifestyle.
Yeah.
The young ones were very clear. They were saying, once I got the letter and I was told that the money is going to come one day, I've made sure that no one knows that I'm going to get this money. So they try to stay away from friends and family simply because they think that everybody's going to start asking them now for a little bit of this, a little bit of that, whereas they don't really know what is it that they're going to do with this money. So those are just some of the things.
There for a moment. I'm happy that you gave us those highlights because it's evident that we're speaking about maybe the middle class black South African here. But mentioning some of the ideas that you alluded to, paying off their debts, paying off their homes. As an ordinary South African, I think that those are fairly good accomplishments. But clearly there's somewhere where they've gone wrong.
There's a lot of things where they've gone wrong. They are saying that they are over indebted. That's the big part for them, that they realize that all along they've actually, there's that thing of a false sense of richness or of wealth in that you're treating your overdraft and your credit card as part of your salary. And then that's when they start realizing that this lump sum that's going to come through, it's going to go to first pay off the debts. But then there were also the government employees that we found. When we spoke to the government ones, apparently there's a new law that's coming. That's basically going to say that your retrenchment package, you're not going to get it anymore as a lump sum. You're going to get it in drips. So what they are now doing, they're taking voluntary retrenchment right now so they get the lump sum. And then they relocate to another province to go do the same work that they would have been doing in this province, as an example. So they've gotten very clever now around the system in terms of how then they're going to treat this money. Because now they're treating this money as more of an investment. Some of the most positive things that we saw, especially with those who are more smarter, is they said they want to buy shares at the Sasol and the MTN shares that were available around that time. That's what they went actually and did that. But obviously they want to make sure that the standard of life that their children were living, it's not necessarily getting compromised. That's the one thing that most of them are talking about. It was very difficult to find these people because it's not something that people are proud of saying that have been retrenched, because it's almost a sense of rejection, the way they see it, But the spin-off, as I said earlier, is it's fueling entrepreneurship. it's making, you know that thing when they say that you don't want to jump off the cliff. Now what they do, they've pushed you off the cliff. And people are starting to say that. We also have some interesting questions. Things like, what would you have done differently? The much older ones, they're saying that I shouldn't have been loyal to one company for so long. Some of them are saying I would have done more whistleblowing when I saw that some of my colleagues were stealing things from the company.
Sure.
Now they realize the impact of the theft from the employees themselves in terms of them having gotten involved. There were stories about unions that they spoke about, which I would run at 12 because we're still doing some research in that. Those who worked in the factories, interestingly, we got two sides of stories there. One of them, some of them were saying to us they were never told that they're getting retrenched. They just woke up one day, they found the money in their account, they thought the company made a mistake. So they withdrew all the money and went on a day job.
Oh.
Came back, the company shut down. The other ones were saying once the company has actually told them that they're liquidating, they go there every day. They make sure that they know where the bosses stay, because they say the bosses sometimes just skip the country.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just some of the things that, are keeping these people up at night.
I want to ask you about the level of mindset, especially when it comes to the lifestyle change. In South Africa, we're known for having a very high level of conspicuous consumption. We want to be seen in those fancy cars, wearing those nice clothes. But is it easy for these individuals who've responded to this particular survey to have adapted and acclimatized to the lifestyle change?
It isn't, because there's the shame. There's the fact that I've been living this fleshy life and now I still have to maintain this fleshy life. I mean, another study that we did, and it was a different race this time around, during that time when the interest rates were so high. You remember that those years? I mean, the one side of the township market, they were saying to us how they got affected by the high interest that they could not finish lobola. All right? Because remember, when you do your lobola, you do kind of like project to your soon-to-be in-laws that around this time I would have done. So that was something that we didn't see. But when we spoke to the much white savior ones who say how you got affected, they were saying to us, I've decided to move out of my house and rent it out and take my furniture and put it in the storage and move into a smaller place until things change. We're finding that this market that we spoke to in terms of this current study are not saying things like that. They are not thinking about maybe I need to make a big shift temporarily so that at least I don't have to lose any of the assets that I have acquired. If anything, they are now thinking about how do I start another business to make sure that it complements the salary that I used to get, which is obviously virtually impossible.
Exactly.
If you were earning, say, for example, 30,000 Rand a month, it's very difficult to start a business overnight that's going to actually pay you 30,000 Rand without necessarily now considering the fact that the SARS who will want his PAYE, his VAT, and all those things. Instead, what are they doing? They're saying, I'll relocate to a different place and then settle that house very quickly and so forth. Very, very few of them said to us that they were able to get a job immediately. Very few of them. Most of them are saying, I'm still waiting for my payout. I'm living on UIF and things like that until I actually get this money. So what's going to happen now, you've got someone who's borrowing from John to pay George. Because then by the time that money comes through, there's going to be all these people who actually waiting in line saying, you owe me. It's time for you to pay up.
Which brings us to the need of programs like this, which is financial advice and the need for financial advisors. The demographic that we're referring to here, are they being proactive about seeking professional financial advice instead of waiting for, oh, my boss will do it for me?
No, they're not. That's why it's said that they say that to us, I wish they told me. I wish they brought a person, because I would have learned differently, because now I've spent the money and now I don't know now what to do. I'm stuck. All right. Now imagine now what the frustration now does in those families now, where you are no longer actually able to provide. What do we start having now? You start going to stats and say, can I see the divorce rates? How that's happening? Because that's how psychologically it starts impacting the broader social fiber of our country.
Indeed. Lebo, we've said quite a bit, but the most important thing is that we need to learn how to explore things differently. Let's get a quick recap of tonight's discussion and maybe what we should be learning from these individuals who get their retrenchment packages. Lebo, you've certainly highlighted an important need for financial advice. I wish we could get it for free in this country, but that's on another topic altogether. But for those who might be watching today and know of someone who might be getting a retrenchment package or themselves will go through this in the future, what lessons do they need to learn from the individuals in your study?
I've went through retrenchment when I was a child. The first thing I did, I went to my bank and I said to them, I haven't retrenched, I've got a package that's coming. I need you to tell me what to do with it. All right? My bank was able to look at my finances, were able to look at my debts, and then they were able then to say, because you need your money, we're going to now work out a much lesser payment scheme for you. So as opposed to paying, say, 1,000 rand on your credit card, we're going to registering it down to 200. So people just need to be more transparent. There's no shame to being retrenched. It's a reflection of the state of our country or of the economy as abroad. So that's the first thing. Accepting that you got retrenched. That's the first thing you do. Accept it. Accept it and don't take it personal. You know, it becomes the economics of the country when a business makes a decision. All now you have to do is to go to your debtors and become clean with them because they've got mechanisms and systems. You're not the first person in the world that they're dealing with who says, I've been retrenched. And you will find that they're so flexible, you know, very, very flexible to say, all right, we understand you've given us the retrenchment data. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to repossess this thing? Because getting repossessed, the things getting repossessed is not necessary. It is absolutely not necessary. And then if you have some savings that you've done, things like your stock files, for example, then you need to go and request for a match to be pushed up the list of the next person to be paid out. Yeah. Because to then sit there and say, well, I'm only getting paid in January in the list, and now it's this time of the year, I need the money. You need to then go and say, guys, I need you to push me out because my circumstances have changed, you know, and then you now have to look at all those debit orders and ask yourself, what do I need? What don't I need? Because half the time, which was something that was very positive, none of them were talking about luxurious things that they did with this money. They were talking about basic things, because some of those basic things are not necessarily a necessity. You know, you can do away with renovating your house. You don't need to. You have shelter you have a place to sleep. That's enough for now. You don't have to now bling it and make it look nice and so forth. So I think those are just one little small things that people need to do. And then finally, them as a family need to have a conversation. It's one thing that you are going through this alone, and yet your family is of the impression that you're doing well. Yeah. So they are continuing with going to the clothing stores, buying things. You need to put it down and say, this is the situation now we are finding ourselves in. We need to cut down on things. And before you know it, you know what they say, after 29 days, you develop new habits after 29 days of being consistent for that 29 days. Before you know it, it becomes your way of life. All the luxurious things are gone.
Precisely. Lebo, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Amazing insights that we've heard, but that's where we have to leave it for Personal Finance tonight. A big thank you once more to Lebo Motshegoa, who's the Managing Director of Foshizi, for joining us tonight. Remember that we want to hear from you, and you can tell us about your experiences with struggling to get financial advice, or if you are speaking to a financial advisor, what potential topics you think are of relevance. You can tweet any of your comments or suggestions to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410, or to myself @Gugulethu on Twitter. Until next time, it's goodbye.